An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but a glass of OJ keeps the adversary at bay. Here's Odd Job. Hey, it's time for a glass of OJ. I'm Odd Job. So, you no doubt have heard about the latest LastPass breach. Yes, the latest LastPass breach. No, not the 2022 LastPass breach. The first one, that is. I mean the second 2022 LastPass breach. Yes, LastPass seems in the last 10 years has had at least 7 breaches that we know about. And that in itself is a bit concerning, and partly one of the reasons why I ditched LastPass for Bitwarden, I think about last year. But it has people wondering right now is, should I be worried about this breach? Should I ditch LastPass? Should you just get off the internet altogether? It depends. Let's go over some background. So, what we basically know is that despite all the breaches LastPass has had in the past, it largely hasn't mattered. Usually what has been received was not the vaults themselves. The vaults have usually been fairly secure. What usually has happened is attackers have been able to find the list of keys, master password keys. They're hashed, so you actually have to go in and start brute forcing those master passwords, which LastPass would tell you about. You'd go reset your master password, and now they can't log into your account. They can't get into your vaults that way. So largely those would be useless breaches at that point if everybody reset their master passwords. So great. Not only that, but even if your vault was taken, there's still a lot of insulation from risk because your passwords are encrypted, the usernames are encrypted, the secure notes themselves, anything you put in the secure note is encrypted. So a lot of those types of things are encrypted, so you also don't have to worry about that. It's going to take a while for an attacker to brute force or, try to go through all those vaults. LastPass has something like 23 million users, and so it's going to take time. Well, LastPass had a breach in 2022, August. And nothing was really impacted because it was just their developer environment. And they concluded and notified customers that they couldn't find evidence of any unauthorized access of customer data or the vaults. And apparently their dev environment doesn't have personal data. All good, right? Well, then in September, apparently, LastPass detected even more activity. And basically what had ended up happening is these attackers had gained persistence into the environment. They had been able to compromise a developer's credentials, and somehow they were able to gain persistence, and when the developer logged on again and used their MFA, they were able to impersonate fully the developer in the environment. So everything that the developer would do looks normal and like business. And they stole source code. And they also stole some other information about the environment at LastPass. Still no vaults, though. Well, they used Mandiant. They got everything kicked out, and everything's great. They contain the environment. No impact to the customers. Everything's good. November, we actually then learn that the attackers used the information they gathered via the August breach to gain access to the backup environment for LastPass, which does include the backups of the vaults and master passwords. So your form fill data, which is like, addresses that you would put into to sites, as well as usernames, passwords, secure notes, those are all still encrypted. So that's at least a good. But LastPass doesn't encrypt everything. For instance, it didn't encrypt your URLs. They also did not bother to encrypt your billing addresses, email addresses, company names, phone numbers, or IP addresses that are associated with your account and your accessing of your account. So, if you've been traveling around and everything, the bad folks have access and know where you've been traveling based on your IPs to access LastPass. Don't know how far back that goes, but they have some travel information about you and can divide people up by geolocation at this point. which could be good to know. And because URLs are not encrypted, we got some observations here now. Because the URLs are not encrypted, which is something, again, that Bitwarden does do. This is not sponsored by Bitwarden. I just happen to use it. URLs not being encrypted by LastPass was something I just learned about during this breach. I thought everything, when you start a new LastPass entry and you put stuff in there, I was under the impression that all of that data was encrypted. I'd never read otherwise. So I was just under the impression that everything was encrypted. No, that's not the case. It's just the username and passwords, and then the secure notes themselves. Which is really bad, because when you think about when you usually create accounts, you're usually taken to onboarding or IDM or other types of websites or onboarding sites that may have a lot of extended, sometimes there's just a token that goes away after your session, but sometimes they include a lot of information about what type of account you have, maybe account numbers, customer IDs, or other stuff like that you also may not want an attacker to know about. Not every site is really good about not putting information in URLs that are not needed, really, or that shouldn't be in there, and you should gather or have that information passed via other means besides the URL. So that's bad. And so you could also then, of course, use the URLs to see who goes to certain sites that maybe those people don't want everybody to know about. I'm thinking back in the day with Ashley Madison, right? Of, embarrassing sites that you might go to set up certain types of encounters or other things. You may not want people knowing, for some reason you do not watch pornography. You may not want people knowing that you go to certain pornography. Maybe Pornhub's vanilla, but there's maybe some other types of pornography you don't want people knowing you access. Maybe this is an opportunity to embrace that part of your life and get rid of stigma. Or maybe there's still some embarrassment there and you don't have to explain to people. So there's blackmail possibilities that exist there, right? There's also work URLs. So now they know where you work. There's all kinds of information now that they have access to, and they can see, at the very least, where the Bank of America customers are. They can see where certain utility customers are. They can see where investment account, do you have Wells Fargo or Merrill Lynch or Fidelity or any of these types of places that store and do your investments, your Robinhood accounts. What about your Bitcoin accounts, right? What about your Bitcoin and cryptocurrency accounts, your blessed NFT accounts with all the hundreds of thousands of dollars that now are $5 stickers, digital stickers, basically. Maybe those are now possibly compromised, right? Those are at risk. So there's a lot of things that you probably do not want attackers knowing that you even have accounts for those things. But now you can be mapped very easily to those accounts. And again, they've got things like your address associated with that, and email addresses, which a lot of people use their name in their email address, company names that you may belong to, billing addresses. So they can do a lot of information to actually start putting names themselves. I don't know if the name of the person with the account is part of the vault and it's unencrypted, but I'm just going to assume now they have people names, human names associated with all of these accounts. And they can do comparisons against other breaches they've been engaged with to kind of see if they can enrich that data. But at the very least, now they have, okay, this person here, this person in, Washington, D.C., possibly politicians, possibly high-ranking executives. There's a lot of people who are probably quite worried about this breach. So you have to do your own threat modeling. So that's interesting. So LastPass also claims that only 3% of their users aren't using the default security settings for their master passwords, which the default setting is that you create an at least 12-character password. Mine are always significantly more. So there you go, attackers. You know you at least have to start your password guessing at least 12 characters for me. It's usually quite more. So you can skip the 8-character password guesses, right? So the 3% likely have 8 minimum. And if we know general user behavior, most of those probably just said, oh, I only have to use 8. Well, here, let's think of a word. It's probably 8 to 10 characters, right? And they claim that it would take on a 12-character password millions and millions of years using even current technology dedicated to crack those passwords. And that's not correct. When you think of how many people, so when you think about what the use case for a password manager is, first of all, to just simply manage your accounts and ease of being able to log in is a huge thing, right? Being able to just be like, oh, I don't have to remember my passwords and put them in. Something else remembers my passwords, and I just click, it autofills, and I log in. That is just, first of all, a fantastic convenience to the user. Another reason why I believe everyone should use these. It's super easy to log in now. It's not a chore to be like, well, I can't remember my password. To remember your password, a lot of people started reusing passwords. Maybe they would just change their bank and other important passwords, but you would have reused passwords. So LastPass shows you where you're using in any password manager, shows you where you're reusing the same password over and over, and encourages you to go and change all those passwords. So it's a great way to make sure, and especially on new accounts, you're generating a new password for each account. And again, it's getting stored. You don't have to remember a 32-character password or a 128-character password. It just gets stored and you use it. Fantastic, right? But a lot of the passwords are still based, your master password is usually something you can remember. So you probably use something that's easy to guess or easy to remember, usually words. And yes, even if you put an exclamation mark at the end, attackers and password crackers have long since been able to put inside their scripts, putting alternate spellings, changing that S to a 5 and changing that A to a 4 and or the S to a $sign from time to time. So, hey, it's future OJ here, and essentially right after I finished recording all of that wonderful episode you're about to watch the rest of, essentially I saw that there was a class action lawsuit against LastPass. The John Doe plaintiff that is starting the class action claimed that they had a Bitcoin wallet and they had the private key for it stored, which kind of makes me think that they either had the notes section of the password in LastPass that they were storing this in, or they were using secret notes. Secret notes are encrypted, but the notes section of your password, where you would have a username and password, those two are encrypted. The notes section, as of 2018, is encrypted. So if you have passwords, or if these are vaults that were pre-2018, it could be that vaults that were stolen go back that far. And so the person had been aware of the breach, of course, in August, which this is all part of the same breach, essentially, just different episodes of it. And the person had confirmed they had already been using the best practices, the 12-character password, the best practices that LastPass says should keep you safe and take millions of years to crack your passwords. He said by Thanksgiving, when he received the breach notice, that all of his, or 53,000 in Bitcoin was gone. He had already checked it. It had already been logged into. So by the time he got the breach notification. Now that's interesting, because supposing maybe in October the vaults were actually taken and LastPass didn't notice it and notify until November, that didn't take long for people to start decrypting. And so the question is did this person have an easy to guess password? Those things. The other interesting thing is he deleted customer information off of his vaults, apparently. I don't know exactly what he means by that, but the article in question, which I'll include down in the doobly-doo, does say that he had deleted his private information from his customer vault. So these are these, how far back, we don't know how far back that goes. I haven't looked at, and I'm probably not going to do a legal analysis of the breach, the actual class action. I may end up just summarizing it without any type of line by line analysis, as I've done some in the past. But yeah, we don't know exactly the dates and times of when he updated to a 12 character password, when exactly he deleted his private information, but that would give us a clue as to how long these folks, LastPass, are keeping your information for, and how long they're keeping these vaults for, which actually brings up an interesting question, because customer data that exists here is stuff like usernames, or rather URLs, IP addresses of your accesses, and company address, and people, your name. It's interesting to see what would happen now in Europe with regards to GDPR if it's found out that they said, hey, I'm deleting my vault. And maybe they even went a step further and said, please delete all information you have about me. Is there a way to go back into backups and delete that information? If I remember correctly, I believe GDPR, you are required to go back into your backups and to make sure these things are removed from there. You should have no storage of that person's information ever again, until they start, I guess, business with you again. So that's an interesting thing. So very concerning. You might go check your Bitcoin wallets. Things may already be bad for you. So even more reason to go ahead. It's been what, 2 months now, since the notice. And of course, it's been several months now since the actual breach started. So who knows when this information was really got at this point. We don't have a clear timeline, totally, as to exactly when those vaults were hit, but it was probably sometime in October, I would imagine. So we're already months in, which I'm either saying soon in the video, or I've already said in this video, it's probably a matter of months at best, if you don't have a really good master password, even if it's 12 characters. Passphrases or whatever, common phrases, those are going to get cracked very quickly. So yeah, don't be surprised now if they've already targeted the Bitcoin, or if they're targeting certain banks, or they're targeting certain accounts, because those are all unencrypted. They can see your domains, they can see who you work for, they can see all of that, and that can just target who they want to go after. So yeah, stay safe out there, and go do the stuff that I'm telling you about in this video right now. Let's go back to past OJ, to a $sign from time to time. So going through the dictionary and doing all of the alternate spellings and leet speak spellings of all of those, and in combination and stuff like that, those are things that dictionary attacks do. So if you've been using password with an @, a 5, a $sign, a W, a capital W with a 0, and then let's see, RD with a question mark or an exclamation mark or something like that, that's not going to stop anybody, right? So, or 1, 2, 3 at the end to get to the 12 characters, that's definitely not going to help you. Especially if you had an 8 character password and you went to 12 by just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a series of numbers and a number, that's not going to help you. The dictionary is going to go through and chunk all these things together and brute force just the parts that are possibly different. So it goes from millions of years down to potentially months to break a single master password, and that's if you're dedicating a significant, a non-trivial amount of resources at one particular account. So if you're an executive, if you're a politician, if you're someone who looks like you're going to be a high, someone with accounts that they want based on the account listing, or you're a person they really want access to, then you probably need to worry. That might be something to worry about. But yeah, so the 12 character password probably isn't going to do all that much to help you. Having a longer password certainly will, because again, it is more complexity. There is more opportunity to put different characters in, passphrases and things like that start becoming a thing. And that is a bit harder for people to use. So you'll extend that time quite a bit by doing that. I am not a professional password cracker, though. I'm just kind of going on some of the information I've gleaned from password crackers that I've read up on. And so, you know, it's password crackers out there aren't going to go from guessing, brute forcing, you know, a exclamation mark, one exclamation mark, you know, they're not going to do that. You know, it's not a Stewie Griffin on the phone going 111 111 111. No, damn it, number 111 112. Ah, dang it. You know, it's not. That's not what's going to happen. They've got other ways of brute forcing this using dictionary attacks, as well as other types of, won't say algorithms, because that kind of gets murky when you start talking about cryptography, but they have algorithms, or they have scripts and ways and methods, basically, of speeding up that process, and not going in sequence, but going in randomized orders as well, to get faster at breaking that master password. So the encrypted passwords are still secure. So what's in your vault is still secure. But again, it goes back to the mapping of the URLs to users. They now are going to have a large phishing campaign. You can imagine now all the Bank of America folks, you know, they're going to go after very specific people, and they may not have your username, but you know what? You probably use your email address as your username. So now a forgot user's password or whatever can be possible. And so now they can start doing that, or they phish you and try to get access into these things based upon your email address. So now they have very easy ways of going through. Maybe even it's a matter of they try to impersonate your company. Maybe they find users at a particular company that they want to go and try to phish and get passwords to work accounts and other things like that. And they want to try to act like and impersonate your business that you work for and say, yes, we need that password due to the breach. We need your master password so that we can get in and change some security settings. You're going to see all kinds of interesting creative phishing attempts, not only for Bank of America, Chase, the normal things that we usually see out there, Amazon accounts, AWS accounts, other types of things. You're going to see, you know, grouping users and usernames, especially company-based usernames, by the companies themselves out there. And that's going to end up being phishing campaigns that are impersonating those companies. So both the security professionals protecting everyone, as well as you as a user, need to be aware of that, and be highly suspicious of anybody asking for your master pass. You should already never give anybody your LastPass master password, but you should be very concerned if, or suspicious rather, if you're being asked to enter in your master password and you are not deliberately, via the normal ways, trying to log into LastPass. So what do we do, right? Well, in this case, resetting your master password doesn't stop the breach that's already happened. Resetting your master password will not go back and reset those vault's passwords that the attacker now has in their hands. That master password is set. Those keys that are have encrypted that have been based on your master password. Those are already set. So those vaults are actually, you might consider those breached. They could go through those vaults, try to decrypt. It will take a long time for them to do so, but you know, those are now in a sense compromised. It's just a matter of time at this point before they get decrypted. So reset your master password though, so that they can't gain access to your current account, and make sure you're using MFA, and not SMS MFA if you can. Try to make it an app where you actually type in a number. We don't want MFA fatigue with just the push notification. So make sure we're doing that. Also evaluate what accounts you have in LastPass and begin resetting those. So think about it: retirement accounts, banks, investment accounts, Amazon. Think about other stores you go to that may store part or all of your credit card numbers. Because sometimes they also store your expiration date where you can see it. They store the last 4. They may store the last 6. So attackers can use that to kind of go through, if they've got access now to that account, they can go through and piece together what your credit card and payment numbers are. You know, now that they have the last four, they're probably going to, if they know your banking institution, even your local credit unions, they can guess those first 8 digits. They can guess those first 8 digits, and those last 4 are the last they need to figure out. And that's honestly fairly predictable as well. So as long as they have your last 4, they can probably do a decent job of figuring out what the rest of that is. And if they have your expiration date and they got your zip code because they have your billing address, your credit cards also may be at stake. So you really need to go into anything that has any type of credit card information stored on you that's visible on the account. Go ahead and reset that. Amazon's a place. Your Google wallets are, of course, a place. Just start thinking of those types of places. Where do you go shipping? DoorDash, anything like that that would have those types of things. Be sure to get in there and start resetting those passwords. Also think of banks in general. Also think of healthcare portals, because you do sometimes have bank payment information, utilities where you might have bank and checking account information. Sometimes the routing number and account numbers on theirs, they don't necessarily obfuscate that when you go to pay or something like that. So you also may worry about your checking account or savings account being exposed that way. So any of your work accounts you may have, and work accounts, not necessarily just your login to work, but SaaS products that you use that may not use single sign-on, that you have to have separate accounts for, right? I know in security, we have all kinds of security vendors that help us, and we've got support portals, and we've got other types of portals with those. And sometimes we don't have single sign-on capability there, and you've got to have a separate password that you're probably keeping in your LastPass password manager. You probably want to go and reset those as well. And secure notes, anything, look at your secure notes, see what you have. Do you have bank account information in that? Do you have secret code words that you use to get to, your safe deposit boxes or something like that? Challenge codes. Do you have MFA challenge codes? Because sometimes people back up their MFA for certain sites. Do you have those backups? Because they can now potentially actually hit your MFA. So you may actually need to make sure, you've swapped your MFA or you've done something else to work with that. You may have to figure that out. But also sometimes we put in usernames and passwords to things that don't necessarily have, websites to go to. So maybe it's an SSH key, maybe it's a password account to something, and we just store it in a place, or it's a long list of accounts, right? And we put them in there. You're going to want to think about possibly resetting those details, or figuring out what you got to do to remediate there. And I would start there, then go to your social media sites as well, because make sure you're MFA'd there as well. On any of these accounts where you can, turn on good MFA, because then even if they have your password, you've reset the password for one, but you can also turn on MFA. So now anytime they try to log into, they're now going to have MFA to deal with, and you'll at least be able to catch them. You'll get an email address. You'll get an email sometimes if that's configured, but it's not going to be something they're going to just be able to have immediate access to your accounts then. So that's stuff you can do now to help out with that. Do this immediately. Don't wait. You've got a little time, but you don't have years. And depending on who you are and what accounts you have, you may not even have months. They may start targeting people. And especially if you end up getting phished for your master password, you definitely do not have years for this. So be sure to go ahead and do those password changes. Be suspicious of any email directing you to enter LastPass details of any kind, unless you are logging in through your normal process, your normal experience of logging in through LastPass via the extension or via going to LastPass itself and logging in. Unless those are the two ways you're accessing that, be suspicious of anything requesting or redirecting you to some kind of LastPass prompt to enter passwords. Be very suspicious of that and question what's going on. Call somebody, let somebody know, right? If someone sent you a link saying, I'm trying to share this document with you, and all of a sudden it says, yeah, you need your LastPass credentials to sign in, you should be very suspicious about that, and you need to go and pick up the phone and actually call the number you know that person on, and you need to ask them, hey, by the way, did you send this, right? So take note of that and be very suspicious and act with suspicion. Well, don't act suspiciously, but act with suspicion against those types of things. Should you get rid of LastPass? I did. I did last year. I got rid of LastPass. I think it was at the beginning of the year. I said, I'm just going to go ahead and switch from LastPass to Bitwarden. I'm tired of seeing the breaches. I'm tired of seeing all the vulnerabilities they've had in their system. Yes, they fixed the vulnerabilities, but from some of the things I've been reading about their security culture and ambivalence towards fixing things, it makes me wonder about when they say we take your security very seriously. It makes me wonder. And it doesn't make me feel at ease when they do that. So I went ahead and just left. I went to Bitwarden. I researched them. Open source. You can go and view the code yourself, which puts pressure on them to fix it, of course. But they fixed that code. They release it. It's open source. That's fantastic. They encrypt everything you give them, the URL included. So that's another big plus. That's something I'm just realizing. Oh wow, Bitwarden encrypts the URL. So fantastic. Bitwarden was a little bit of a letdown from a usability perspective. It's not. It doesn't autofill like I like it, like LastPass would. You actually have to go up to the extension and click the account you want to use. So I've gotten used to that. It's also not always good at noticing your action. And LastPass sometimes had this problem, but Bitwarden sometimes has a problem, or actually all the time has the problem of, for me these days, has the problem of it doesn't seem to detect all the time when I'm either changing a password or creating a new account, and sometimes it just doesn't store the credential. And I'm finding myself looking later going like, I stored that in Bitwarden. But I'm still loving it more due to the security implications and everything else that's going on with it. And quite frankly, the features you get on mobile, I was tired of LastPass increasing their basic features into premium features, and I was tired of that. Bitwarden, you still got to pay to get some of those features, but it's a lot less. So I figured I'd also take my money someplace where it looks like I'm going to get better value. Yeah, so basically I stopped trusting them. It simply was a matter of I just stopped trusting them, and I went to some place where so far I'm actually trusting them a lot more. And the little humps in experience that I've experienced, it's not enough to pull me away from it. So that's what I do that. Perhaps the road was always leading here. One thing I worry about is that LastPass didn't learn from their previous breaches everything that they should have learned. That's when you look at the timeline from August to September to November, and you're seeing them, I could just imagine the internal conversations they've been having. But when you kind of take a look and see what was going on, your dev environment was hit, your developers were hit. And yeah, even when you bring Mandiant in and they say, hey, we're contained, we're good to go. What else was happening? I want to know what else was happening. What action items came out from that? What did not get prioritized on action items, from August to September when this happened again, and they got further in, and then turns out they got access into the backup environment. Makes me wonder, we may never know what was going on behind the doors, but it's enough to make me go, maybe they don't learn their lessons. And especially from past breaches, maybe they don't learn their lessons so well. So that was my concern. So if you have a user, like let's say your grandparent, your parent, who's using LastPass, have them go through, for instance, and reset their passwords, have them go through do the account resets and all those types of things. But the other thing is to think about is if you need to move them off of LastPass, is the new experience going to be too much of a hurdle for them that they won't use the password manager? That's worse. Not using a password manager is worse than not using a password manager is worse than using LastPass still. That's still true. Having no MFA is still worse than having SMS MFA, right? We're looking at risk reduction here. Maybe the little bit of extra effort is causing it to where it no longer reduces the risk that you're looking to reduce here. So think about what LastPass is offering you. And, is the level of effort involved in switching over, exporting and importing passwords and teaching them a new experience, is that too much of a hurdle? You're gonna have to test that and figure it out. It's worth a try though. But I found this breach frustrating because I was a past LastPass customer and I don't know which vaults were. I don't know if they destroyed my vaults. I don't know, how far back were these backups? Are these backups from last year, 2020, 2021, 2022? Like, where were these backups from? And so, should I be worried? I don't know. And so I'm even having to go through, as a recent enough LastPass user, I'm having to go through and just say, yeah, I'm hit. So I'm going to have to take this. Should I host my own Bitwarden? Because you can do that. You can host Bitwarden yourself. Or maybe I use KeePass and sync it up to the cloud, or use a VPN to access on-prem. Why? Everyone's like, oh, I'll just host it myself. Oh, I'll take a platform that someone else is doing. Then why don't you just go and drop Gmail and run your own email? Why don't you just drop all the storage out there and run a NAS in your environment and go through that remotely? Why don't you go and do a lot of other things and host all of your own services on all of your own platforms and do all of that? Why don't you do all of that? Because it's time consuming. Its cost is ridiculous for the value you're going to get out of it. I don't understand people who just want to go and build their own platforms, except for when it's just fun, you're learning, or maybe you have a threat model that means you really should do that, right? So maybe you should, because are you really going to keep your platform more secure than a multi-million-dollar company with staff and threat defense and all these other all these partners and service providers and vendor tools, enterprise grade tools working on their behalf? Probably not. You're just not going to be at that level. I don't care what pfSense rules you have going on. I don't care if you have, not SourceFire, but Zeek everywhere in your environment doing all kinds of things. I don't care what if you're using SE Linux or AppGuard or whatever it is on Linux. I don't care if you've got all of that. Like, you're just not going to have the time. You can't, this is not your full-time job. It's simply not. So it makes no sense. It really makes no sense for me to do it. And at the end of the day, the cloud part of this is not the problem. Like, this would have happened on-prem. This could have happened to you. This could have happened to anybody. You're probably going to be luckier because maybe people aren't going to target you. They'll have to target you to get that. But is that level of effort involved in maintaining all these platforms worth the I'm getting lucky that people aren't targeting me? You'll have to decide that yourself. But if your threat model really does dictate that you should have your own account access manager, or kind of, I guess, PAM, you should have your own PAM solution and everything should be a privileged account for you, and you need to have that on-prem and you need to manage it yourself and not be cloud connected at all, and have VPN access guarded for that. I don't know. That's a threat model you're going to have to figure out, but that's the only reason I can think of to want to build your own platforms and do these things. But if your threat model dictates that you have a fully hosted solution, then sure. But that's a lot of effort and needs to really be necessitated by a good threat model to justify. Vast majority of you out there, yes, even the very power user techie folks watching, it's just not worth your time. Or you just want to do it for fun, then go for it. Do it. I'm not going to tell you no on that. If it's fun and you get enjoyment out of it, then sure, go do it. A lot of people love just standing up, learning how to build systems. It could be a great project, actually, for you to have a service at home and learn how to serve that up to yourself, or sync with the cloud and do some of these things. Could be a good project. Is it long-term? Maybe, maybe not. But should this be the reaction you have to a cloud service that you haven't built your own platform before? No, that shouldn't be the reaction. You should do that for other reasons. So what are your thoughts? Have you moved off LastPass? Are you trying to move everybody in your family off LastPass? What are you trying to do? Do you have a lot of work now ahead of you to reset your passwords? How's your company responding to this? You know, LastPass has a lot of enterprise-based customers, and honestly, you have a lot of employees who are using LastPass probably to manage passwords for your stuff. So have you sent out a statement? Have you told them, hey, you need to follow these recommendations, reset your master password, go through and reset all of the work email accounts that or work accounts you stored in there, and make sure you do this by this time. I don't know if we yet have a list of email addresses associated with this particular thing. I don't know if Have I Been Pwned is going to come out with anything that allows you to look at domains and see if your domain is your work domain is involved in the breach at all. Yeah, you might end up having that, and you might be able to see who's LastPass users, and you might be able to get them to at least reset their AD credentials, reset their work account stuff, even if they don't reset their master password. So, and you may even try to provide your own password manager. Maybe this is the time for your company to go, yep, we don't want people relying on and choosing their own password manager, because it actually does matter what password manager you have for this company. We're going to go with 1Password or Dashlane or Bitwarden or something else. We're going to manage our own KeePass. We're going to host our own. You know, that's a perfect opportunity possibly to host your own, possibly. So think about that. But what are your thoughts? Share them down in the comments. Catch me on social media, and stay safe.